Welcome to Phases. Today, we are going to be talking about our top 10 tips for parenting in 2026. Now, these are my tried and true tips that I love and share with all parents, and I'm really excited to talk about them today with you. So, my name is Dr. Courtney Talinsky. I'm a licensed clinical and educational psychologist with over 15 years working with parents and families.
And I'm Scott, Courtney's husband. I do podcasting for a living. And, well, this is our first episode of Phases. So welcome to the podcast. And I'm really excited to get into this one. We're kicking off, we're getting into March, but it still feels like the new year, right? So
Does it?
well, it does to me. You know what? It does to me. And so,
I feel like I've lived a whole life in these past 2 months.
yeah, that's kind of how it feels, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we move into the interior of 2026,
Okay, yes.
we're going to be sharing our top 10 tips here for parenting. I'm really excited. Again, this is our first episode, so we're going to be figuring out formats. We're going to be figuring out things that we want to talk about and the way we want to do it. You can always head to phases.fm if you have a question for us or a question for the doctor specifically. Just leave a question in that form there, and we'll get to it on a specific episode where we do questions and answers. I think that's a good place to kick it off here as we move into our first parenting tip. Court, are you ready?
Yeah, let's get going.
Cool. So what is number one?
Okay, number one is celebrate all the wins. Now, I love this one because, it's really easy, I think, just as people in general, to focus on the negatives or the things that are going wrong. And it's harder to acknowledge the things that people do well, right? And,
Yeah.
we're talking about kids specifically, but I think that's just kind of human nature, right? Sometimes you have to try really hard to focus on the positive or even just kind of like the normal things that others do that are, what you would expect.
Yeah.
But kids a lot of times, and especially neurodivergent kids, but, today we're going to be talking about all kids, they hear a lot of criticism throughout the day. And that's really hard for kids, to constantly hear don't do that, stop running,
It's honestly
stop
hard.
yelling.
I think something that parents who need some perspective on this. It's hard for anybody to get criticism all day, every day, right? And
Yeah,
we don't think
for
about
sure.
that as much with kids because they need more correction than most adults do.
Right. They're still growing, evolving humans. And of course, they need redirection, right? And support and structure, scaffolding, all the words, all the things. They need that. But it's also really important to acknowledge what they're doing well. And we have a son in particular, who needs a lot more support and structure than our other child. And sometimes it's really hard for both of us to remember. We need to acknowledge the things that he's doing well, right? And really let him know, hey, I see you. You did that really
Yeah.
well. And these can be really simple, innocuous things like putting away your plate after you eat, putting it in the sink, picking up your toys or your activity when you're done with it, brushing your teeth without needing a reminder, right? Those are the simple things that we're talking about
Yeah,
as
just
far as
little
wins.
things.
It doesn't have to be oh, you got an A on your spelling test. That's amazing. Of course you want to celebrate that, but it's also really important to celebrate the other things that kids are doing well, the everyday things.
Yeah, I do think a nice work, good job, or any of that kind of stuff goes a long way. You know what? I've been really always thinking about this since becoming a manager is really making sure that you are celebrating people's wins in general,
Yeah.
not just your children. But I do think it is the exact same concept, and kids just need it more. And the other day, our daughter was at gymnastics, and she turned around, and to some random woman, she says, "I love your bag," and the lady was so happy that she said that. I go immediately to our daughter and I say, that was so nice of you. Thank you for doing that. That was so
Right.
cool.
Yeah.
Trying to make her feel good about because she is shy, and that
Yes.
probably was not easy for her. Or another thing, when she goes to gymnastics, I've had her doing her own check-ins now. So she goes up to the counter and says her full name and gets checked in
Oh,
herself.
that's awesome.
And every time she does it, I give her a big high five and I celebrate that because the very first time she was just shaking in her boots doing it. She was having a hard time getting up the courage to go do that. And
Yeah.
I think now after she does it, she looks to me for that like celebration of, hey, I did it again, you know?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think that's great. And one thing I want to mention too, like with adults, obviously, great job or whatever is amazing. But with
Good work,
kids,
kid.
kids, you do want to be careful not to praise like the outcome, but you want to praise the process,
Mm,
right? And maybe this is like a whole nother, this is
yeah.
probably a whole nother episode, but you want to say like, oh, I see you worked really hard on that coloring project, right? Like, tell me about what you did,
Mm,
right? So rather than saying, wow, it looks so beautiful, or
okay.
wow, you got an A on your test, that's amazing, like I said.
Why does that matter? I
Well,
know you could get into it much deeper, but on a
yeah, it
high
matters
level.
because we don't want our kids' self-worth to be tied to achievement,
Okay.
right? Or like always doing the best, because that leads to adults who become like perfectionistic and people pleasing, right? And their
Mm,
confidence depends on their external success,
okay.
right? We want to praise the process of doing the thing,
Yeah.
right? Of not giving up, of having the confidence to try new things, of putting the effort in, right? That's what we want to praise, because those are the skills that lead to confident, secure adults whose value isn't tied to achievement.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Does.
Yeah.
All right. Number 2 here is empathetic listening, not problem solving. And this is the one I probably have the hardest time with I'm a computer programmer. My entire day is spent trying to solve problems.
Yeah.
So when there's things that go wrong, like a lot of men, I fall immediately into, let me fix that. Let me try to solve that.
Yes. Yeah. And I think you're right, not to like gender stereotype, but I do think women are a little bit better at this, because that's how we like connect with each other, is just sharing our feelings. And maybe that's gender stereotyping too. But yes. So the thing here that we want to focus on is helping your child to identify their feelings and not solve their problems for them.
Yeah.
Right. So your child may sit down and say, I had a really bad day.
Mm,
Like my friend didn't want to play with me and it was the worst. And, you might want to jump in and say, like, well, did you go up to your friend and like try to talk about it? Or did
mm,
you go to try to find new friends? But sometimes your child doesn't want you to solve their problems, right? They want you to hear them and to like share in that feeling with them.
yeah.
So rather than jump to problem solving, we want to say, "Oh wow, that sounds really hard. I wonder if you felt really lonely, right? Or
Mm,
oh, that sounds terrible, bud. Like that happened to me one time in elementary school.
mm,
Here's what happened." So you could share a story that's similar to show how you relate, but really you want to help your child identify their
yeah.
feelings.
I found that telling about a time that same thing happened to me has been very effective with our son for sure. Um,
Really?
I think he really latches on to those types of things, and he'll bring it up later too. So I
Yeah.
like that to me is the biggest identifier, especially with him, if it actually reached him or not, is if he remembers it beyond a moment.
Right. So, as an adult, sitting in your child's shared sadness can be really tough, right? It feels really uncomfortable to sit in someone's sad or like challenging feelings,
Yeah.
and it makes you feel better if you step in and try to problem solve. But it doesn't always help the child, because a lot of times they don't want the answer, right? They
Yeah.
just want to know that they're heard, that they don't have to sit in that feeling by themselves. Yeah, it really helps a child knowing that they have security, right? And a sense of comfort, that they
Hmm.
can go to you and not feel alone in their feelings. That's really what they're looking for. Is, I don't want to feel alone in this. It hurts, but I don't also need you to fix it for me,
Yeah.
right? I just need to know that you understand and I'm not alone here.
Yeah, that's so interesting in general. I have a hard time with this one, but I think that's one that I would like to remind myself of a little bit more. You know what? I think that this podcast is going to be really good for me to have this designated time to put all these reminders into my brain of all of the stuff and I hope, honestly, I hope that's what it's doing for the audience as well. So because Courtney's expertise is so deep. So I think getting this opportunity to be able to really pick her brain once a week is just a really great thing. So number three is practice co-regulation. Like, what is that? What does co-regulation mean?
Yeah. So regulation is essentially like being in control of your body
Mm.
and being able to like stay calm in the face of stress or anxiety, right? So it's being able to control yourself in any type of environment. So when we as adults get dysregulated, it looks like getting really angry, yelling, lashing out, being impulsive, being super anxious, right? It can be anything that's not like a neutral, calm state in the face of some like external or internalized stressor,
Mm.
right? Self perceived. So as parents, we want to try our best to regulate ourselves, right? Which essentially means to stay calm, right? Don't escalate yourself in response to your child getting escalated.
Now, how do you do that? Because that's so difficult. That's
it's
I feel like that
it's
feels
really
impossible. Yeah.
hard. Trust me, this is so hard. It's something that I think even the best of parents, like myself included, need to work on constantly because we are human, right? And it's kind of natural to get dysregulated in response to stressors, right? That's just the human response.
Hmm.
So the best thing is to really practice it, right, throughout your day. Try to do check-ins. Think about like, how am I feeling right now? Am I
Hmm.
stressed? Right? And if I'm stressed, I need to do something about it that will help to regulate my body, right? Whether that's go for a walk, talk to a friend, take deep breaths, whatever it is, but it's just checking in, seeing how you're feeling, and then adjusting your activity to help calm yourself down, right? So if your child is losing it because their toy broke and it's their favorite toy and they're never going to find another toy like
Hmm.
it, and they start going into hysterics, it can be really easy to like try to stay calm,
Oh,
try to stay calm, try to stay calm. And then like,
yeah, feel it.
2 minutes into it, you just hit a wall and you just start screaming because you're picking up on your child's dysregulation,
Hmm.
right? But as parents, we don't want to do that, right? We want to steer the ship of calm. And your kids can borrow your regulated state,
Mm.
and that helps themselves to regulate their bodies as
Do they
well.
actually do that though? Like,
They can, yes. They learn over time. It's not like a magic, like one,
okay.
two, this is, oh, you're calm, so now I'm going to be calm, right? It's a gradual learned trust. It's like the knowing that they're not alone in their feelings,
Mm.
right? It's borrowing self regulation. So if you stay calm, you respond to them calmly, you talk in a soft, controlled tone of voice, right? And you like meet them where they're at. Eventually, they will calm down. Eventually. Now, sometimes that can be like a minute. Sometimes it takes an hour.
What are some good ways for like parents to really be able to do that? I know me more than you. I have a much harder time not letting their deregulation fuel my stress.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it's again knowing kind of where you're at, like throughout the day, throughout the week, right? And especially in that moment too.
Hmm.
So if you're feeling like, oh gosh, like this is a lot for me and I can feel myself like start to get agitated or frustrated with them, then you need to recognize that and remove yourself from the situation.
Mm.
Right? So you can tell your child like, okay, I see you're having a hard time. Just give me a couple minutes and I will be back.
Yeah,
Right?
totally.
Assuming they're in a safe place, of course, right? I'm assuming you're at home. You can also check in with your partner and say, I love this idea of check-ins, of knowing like where each other's at throughout the day, who has more energy to deal with
Yeah.
the challenges that come up throughout the day. So knowing where you're at, where your partner's at, and who's probably best suited to handle that in that moment. Now, of course, sometimes like it's just not possible for your partner to step in. They're probably doing like 50 other things, and that's okay. But it is really important for you to like take a minute, calm down, and then return to the situation. And you'll probably be better able to stay regulated.
Yeah. Yeah, that tracks. It's hard, but definitely I do like that, especially when I feel like I can be like, listen, I'm at a 10 right now. I need you to take over. Um, I always
Yeah.
find that that's really effective for us to be able to, if the other person is available, to be able to utilize that technique.
Yeah, for sure. And there will be times when you just cannot like prevent it from happening. Like it just happens, you snap, you lose it on your kid and the situation kind of like escalates itself. Eventually it returns to calm. But here is where the important piece is to, and this is number 4, is to repair when you lose your cool.
Yeah.
Right? So if you start yelling at your kid and you're like, "Why are you two fighting? Stop fighting. This is too much for me." Um and you have like a couple of minutes after that interaction to like kind of reflect like, "Oh,
Mm,
I was really not in a great space to deal with that, and I didn't handle that the best." The best thing to do is when your kids are calm, come back to them and just be honest and say, "Hey, earlier when I was getting upset and I started yelling, like that wasn't okay.
yeah.
I made a mistake there. I got really frustrated. That happens, but I need to work on that. Next time I'll try better to stay calm and really listen and let you know if I need a break." And what that does, is that your question?
No, no, I think like I think that really helps,
Yeah.
especially with our son who I mean both our kids are very sensitive. Both of our entire family is extremely sensitive.
Yeah,
Even
we're
our
all
dogs are sensitive.
empaths. Yes.
So I think like that really really does help. At least in
Yeah.
our situation, I think that's an important piece of this whole thing.
Yeah, and obviously that takes a sense of vulnerability to be able to apologize to your kids and say like, "Whoops, I made a mistake." But what that models for them is, "Hey, it's okay to make mistakes. That's part of the
Yeah.
human experience." And it's important that you recognize them and take ownership of them and let others know that you will work on it. Right? That really, like as we say, our kids watch what we do and they don't necessarily like do what we tell them to do,
Hmm.
right? They learn from the actions that we're doing day in and day out. And that really models a sense of like ownership and maturity and responsibility that, will be so important for them as adults.
Yeah, totally. All right, well, let's get into the next one. This is just for a day to day thing that you can do to improve everybody's regulation, is really to incorporate more structure into your day.
Yeah.
So, shared family calendars, routines, and rituals, making life more predictable for your kids, I think is a great way to get everybody, not just the kids, but everybody to kind of be on the same page or at least have the same expectations for what's going to be happening day in, day out.
Yeah, totally. And kids love structure. They rely on structure. They thrive on structure,
Mhm.
especially kids who are neurodiverse, like who have ADHD or anxiety. Um, they need structure in order to feel like safe and regulated, as we were talking about, right? They want to know what's coming up. What should I expect? Because so much of the world is like kind of unpredictable and they don't have a lot of like say and independence in the world.
Mhm.
So it is really helpful for them to know like what to expect so they can kind of prepare and then, hopefully make suggestions if there's something they want to do in there. So I love the idea of a shared family calendar, obviously, routines and rituals. And these don't need to be like big, extravagant things. Like we often do the Taco Tuesdays,
Oh
right,
yeah.
in our house. Like that's
Yeah.
just like a fun little thing.
Everybody knows that Tuesday is taco
It's
time.
yeah,
Yes.
right. They know what to expect, and there's different tacos or
Yeah.
Mexican variety, but that's what we do, and they look forward to that, and they talk about it. Other rituals could be like a family walk after dinner. We like pretty routinely do a family game night on Friday nights, and we switch up the
Yeah.
game, and
We do game nights a lot of nights, but
we
yes,
do. But Friday
routinely, yes,
night,
yes.
yes, Friday night is like a thing that we do. And there's a lot of research to show actually that teens who still participate in family game nights actually have like better self-esteem
Mm.
and like more confidence than teens that don't. And I think it just speaks so much to that like structure, kind of knowing that they're safe and there's something happening at home that they can like look forward to and lean into.
Yeah.
And it also provides so much opportunity for like conversation and just connection that you might not have in your busy week when you've got like birthday parties and activities and just all the things that you do.
Yeah, I'm going to be showing a little bit of my and your Midwest, Michigan uh, roots here. But I remember growing up as a kid, really looking forward to playing euchre all the time
Oh, yeah.
with my parents, and now to the point where we both love to play euchre, but we still play euchre with my parents every time they
Yeah, we
visit
do.
and things like that. So I mean that's like something that I've carried into adulthood as being something I really look forward to.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. And I would encourage you, you're probably already doing this. You know, you have some structure to like your weeks. It helps break up the monotony as well. But, you know, really lean into the things that you do once in a while or things that you and your family might find to be fun to repeat on a more consistent basis.
Yeah, I love this one. And the next one here we have is to do regular check-ins with your child. And this is like really what a lot of people are doing just like at dinner, right? But you have some more structure to hear it.
Yeah. So, you know, you can do this in a number of ways. And obviously, it will depend on your child's developmental stage, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm probably not checking in with my 2-year-old like I am my
Did
6-year-old
you
or
have a
my
good
12-year-old.
time at at
Well, yeah.
daycare today? Where the yeah.
Right. Of course, you want to ask those questions. Like, that's fun, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
your kid only has so much like introspection at that age.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at that age, you just want to have fun and be with them, unless you can tell like something really went awry. But, you know, we're talking like elementary through like high school age. This is where this really comes into play because they're spending so much time away from you, too. Like, it's just
Mm-hmm.
important to like come together and kind of get an insight into what's going on in your child's world, you know, what you need to tune into, what you need to celebrate, just all the things, you know, and you can do this a number of different ways. They have like the 10-minute miracle is what's talked about, where you're just spending 10 minutes, like, especially if you have multiple kids, I can imagine this would be really helpful. Like, we just have the two, so it's pretty easy to
Yeah.
like divide and conquer. But, you know, if you've got like 4+ kids, I can imagine like spending dedicated time with each child, you know, whether you do that weekly or every day, if possible, like that is really special time with your kid. And then they know, like, I get this private time with my parent and we can talk about things or we can do an activity together. And it's just a good way to like connect and let them know that like this is your special time with them. So I love that. A lot of people do like your high and low at dinner, like your rose and thorn. There's lots of different like euphemisms for that.
Rose and Thorn. Is this
Oh, you haven't
The
heard that one?
Bachelor? What is the yeah?
The
What are we what are we
I mean,
doing
the
here?
rose is
Yeah.
like the best thing. The thorn is like something bad that
Mm.
happened to you. I'm trying to think of other ones. I usually do like high and low,
Okay.
but there's lots of them that I hear about, you know, but you can kind of go around the table and everyone talks about it, including the parents. You know, I think it's helpful for the kids to hear that, like, oh yeah, mom and dad have like highs and lows to their
Oh
day
yeah,
too.
we're doing stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then another place I love to do this is when you're in the car on the way to an activity because we know, like,
Yeah.
especially millennials, we're spending so much time in the car. Like, that's where we are. We're in the car. We're shuttling our kids to and from school. We're going to like the gymnastics activities, soccer
Yeah, yeah.
games, whatever. You're spending a lot of time in the car. And what I love about check-ins in the car is it removes like a confrontational aspect because you're driving the car,
Yeah.
right? Or you're in the front
You're not
seat.
staring
You're
at
not
them.
staring at your child like, how was your day? What happened to you today? You know, sometimes that can feel like overwhelming for kids or like anxiety provoking, or they just don't know.
Yeah,
You know,
nothing happened.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
especially teens. Oh my gosh, teens do not like to be confronted. They do not want to have that like face to face,
Mm.
especially that's initiated by a parent, you know, generally speaking. So talking in the car provides a great like separation. where there's like less intensity, it's less formal, but you can still have those like really deep, important conversations, checking in, seeing what's going on. And a lot of times they feel more comfortable to talk to you because it feels less pressurized.
Yeah, I love doing this. In fact, like our dance class, our daughter's dance class is a bit of ways. It's maybe like a 20
Yeah.
25 minute drive or something. And we're used to everything being kind of close. And so when those drives happen, I know you were always saying, "Well, should we move someplace closer or whatever for the dance studio?" And it's like I kind of love that time because my daughter and I really just get to connect the entire way there and the entire way back. And sometimes that connection is putting on a kids podcast and like listening and learning about something together, and we talk about it as it goes. And sometimes it's just straight up just asking, she's asking me questions the whole time and I'm just answering her questions. And sometimes it's talking about situations and how she should approach things and stuff like that. And I do like really, really value that time. And I think she gets a lot out of it too. I think that brings us quite a bit closer.
For sure. I love that you do that.
Yeah. So, number 7 here is communicate your expectations in positive language. This is one that I think has changed how I think about things quite a bit when I'm talking to the kids because instead of saying, don't do blank, you should say, this is what should happen. Like, okay, and a good example would be stop putting the pillows on the floor. Our kids love to take the pillows off the couch and put them on the floor. Where what you could say instead is, hey, the pillows live on the couch. This is where they live. This is what they should be. Is that accurate? Is that how you would do it?
Yeah, I love that because, a lot of times kids don't hear all of what we're saying. They hear like the latter part of it. So if you say like stop running in the house with your shoes on, they're probably going to focus on the run with your shoes on in the house, right? We want to say like the expectation, not the negative that they're doing, right? So we want to say like our shoes come off when we enter the door, right? Please
Yeah.
put your backpacks up before you turn on the TV, right? And it's just so helpful for kids to understand the expectations because if you say something else like don't leave your clothes out on the floor, they might wonder like, okay, well, what do I do with them? Where do they
Yeah.
go?
hmm
Right. And that might be an obvious one, but a lot of times we kind of think like, oh, kids know what's expected, and sometimes they don't,
Yeah, you
right?
often forget that they are new to this earth and that they
Right.
need to learn everything. I like for me, it's like, why don't you know to not do that? But no, they don't know.
They
They
don't
don't know.
know,
Yeah.
or like maybe they think it's something else, right?
hmm
And you have a different idea of what that expectation is. So when you use positive language to explain something, it's being really clear about like, this is what I expect, right? Not don't do that because then they're having to like kind of read your mind and figure out like, okay, well, what should I do?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. So it's really helpful to phrase it in a positive way. And that gives kids the expectations and it makes things clearer and calmer for everybody.
Yeah, I love that. Again, it's one of those ones that I think the more I'm reminded of this, the more I get that little reminder, the more I make that change in my approach. And I do think it is more effective for sure.
Yeah. And that's an easy one to change. If you pick one thing on this list, I think that it can be easy to just fix.
I think that's a good note to have, folks, because we're giving you 10 things here. Uh, these are all, it would be tough to just change your life and implement all 10 of these things tomorrow if you
Yeah.
aren't doing a lot
Yes.
of them. So I think a good strategy here is to pick one of these things and latch onto it as being like, oh, that's definitely a problem I have. Let me make that change. And then maybe you can come back to this episode in a month, re-listen, and then make another change and just to continue to improve. Now, granted, if you're a high achiever, you can try to make all these 10 changes, but that's a lot of change in life.
If you were praised for your outcome like I was.
Yes. Yeah.
That may be on your list. No, but
Yeah.
I do. I think you should pick one thing or one area that either interests you or feels like a doable change and try to work on that
Totally.
and don't focus on all 10 of these. But keep
Cool.
them in the back of your mind.
Yeah, keep them in the back of your mind. And again, it's free to re-listen to this if you ever want to come back to it. So, next one here is give your child things to look forward to.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this one because I think it helps to, like I said, kind of break up the year and have kind of like, what would you call that? Like,
Events
yeah,
or
events or yeah, just like highlights throughout the year, things to get excited about. And ideally, your child is incorporated in the planning of
mm,
whatever this is, right? So this could be taking a trip, of course, like a big family vacation, could be just like a weekend activity, right? It could be varied in terms of like its scale and intensity of planning and cost and all the things.
mm,
But just having things to look forward to that are outside of the home or outside of the norm, I think really helps to create memories and like bonding experiences because everyone's experiencing something new and it's a shared activity. And there's this joke about like Christmas, especially like you ask your kids, what did you get for Christmas? And they hardly remember
mm,
usually, or for Hanukkah or whatever holiday you celebrate. They hardly remember the things, but they often remember the experiences that
mm.
you do or you have together, right? Whether it was that trip to grandma's or the camping outing that we did or
Yeah.
going to Hawaii, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be grand, but
Camping outing. When did we do a
well, we
camping?
did not do it.
Courtney's not a camper.
No, I am a camper. This is such a lie, but I need like a working restroom. Like I would be a glamper, I
You're a
suppose.
glamper, yes, yeah.
Yes, yes. But it's planning and creating the memories and just being intentional about your year. And I think that really helps. Everyone has something to look forward to. And I would love if, you incorporated your kids' ideas as well. Like, okay, so we're going to Mexico. What types of activities would you like to do? Would you
Mm.
like to learn to surf or ride an ATV? Would you like to eat here or try this? So just getting your kids' ideas and having them be involved, I think is really special.
Yeah, that's great. And they don't have to be big events. They don't have to be full on vacations. But I do think, I think you have to execute on these things if you plan them with your kid. You don't want to be setting them up for major
Oh,
disappointment.
no,
Yeah,
no. Yeah, you definitely need to follow through. And if you can't for some reason, like you definitely, like we talked about repairing, you need to talk about that. And
yeah.
this is why we couldn't do it. Like we had a work conflict or someone got sick and
There was a
we,
hurricane.
right,
Our
there's,
Disney trip was canceled because of a hurricane, and that was very tough for our
it was,
kids.
oh my gosh, there were so many tears and we had to wait like an additional 2 months. They'd never been. So it was like a really big thing they were looking forward to. That was really tough. But we made it special and we definitely made up for it. But you have to be honest if you can't execute on it. But again, it doesn't have to be anything big too. It can just be like, oh, this weekend, like let's go play mini golf,
Yeah,
right? Or let's go
exactly.
try that new restaurant.
Yeah.
It could just be anything like that, but things that are special and intentional.
Cool. Next one here is something that I love, and I find it really helps, especially with our son, is to teach your child a new skill or learn one together. And we've done a handful of these things. From I got a 3D printer, and that was an investment to make because I knew that the kids would really love to use and learn the 3D printer. And it got to the point like, within a couple of weeks of having it, they were able to change the spools of the filament themselves. We were able to put the printing software on their iPad, and they were able to print things themselves. And like, really, I think understand a complex piece of technology. And our daughter's just getting into it a little bit more right now. She printed some stuff yesterday. We went down to the basement and she was like, "What's this light doing?" And then I'm explaining what LiDAR is to her. And now I'm explaining why the print bed is shaking and heating to try to calibrate itself and those types of things. They're learning all kinds of really neat stuff from having that be here. And to me, like as a creative type of doer person, I'm a maker, I really thrive on those types of experiences myself. So like really getting to spend that time with the kids is some of the most quality time I can have because that's where I really find a lot of interest in sharing my knowledge and in really being able to teach them those types of things. Another thing we've done is we try to add a new instrument to the house. We were doing this every year, but now we have instruments. So it's like I don't know how many more instruments we can add to the house, but we have a piano, electric piano, and a drum set, and I have guitars around anyways. But I played drums my whole life, so getting to have drum lessons with the kids. And they both love different things about the drum lessons. Our son likes to make a lot of noise and our daughter likes to work on her patterns. But they both get a lot of value out of those drum lessons
Yeah.
because I give them time to explore and experiment, but then we also have structured learning time. And then there's times where I'm noodling around on the guitar and they're playing the drums, and we're able to make noise together. They really love that. And I think it does a lot for their self confidence.
Oh, totally. Right. Knowing that you can try something new and fail and make mistakes, but still learn and eventually be successful, or have the confidence to say, you know what, this isn't for me. Like, I need to
Yeah.
pivot and try something else. Right. That teaches so much. It's so important for self confidence and, um, finding like your talents and interests in life. And I think, maybe we do an episode on this, but like in this world of AI that,
Oh,
is
yeah. Stuff doing everything
potentially,
for
well,
you.
it's
Yeah.
coming, but we don't know exactly what it looks like. But, a lot of the like thought leaders are emphasizing, just being curious and being a learner and having passions and hobbies. Um, that will be really important moving forward. So any way that you can like teach those skills to your child by learning something new, and being able to ask questions and be curious about things, I think is great.
Yeah. No, totally.
Okay. And the last one, number 10, is just have fun together, right? We know
It's an easy one,
it's an
right?
easy
It
one,
should
but
be.
it's also like it needs to be kind of intentional too, right?
Yeah.
Some families are really good at like making fun and like seeing the joy out of experiences, and for some families it can be harder, right? Because there's stressors or challenges or um things are hard. And I just know kind of day to day, you can get kind of stuck in a routine, as like a family unit and, oh, this is what we do, day in, day out. And it can get kind of monotonous, but you have to remember like this phase of life, whatever phase you're in, is not permanent, right?
Mm.
It's a temporary phase. And you probably will look back on this time, and your kids will too, of like, oh, those were like really important times. Like, I wish I'd had more fun, or like, oh, that was really fun. I wish we could replicate that
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
So just being intentional about finding the fun in kind of the mundane or the monotony that life can bring sometimes, I think is really important, because obviously you'll probably have fun on a trip, right? Or you go to Disney World, but most days you're not doing that. You're
Yeah.
at home, you've got laundry and cooking and just, all the daily things. So it is important to find the joy in the little things in life. So what are some of the things that you think we do in this house?
Yeah. I think one that I really love is that we went to go visit some friends of ours in Hawaii a few years ago. And one thing I really loved about their household is that they always had music on. And I'm a big music person. Courtney and I both did dance for our whole lives pretty much. And I decided from that point forward, when we got back, I was going to have more music on around the house. So every night at dinner, we have music playing while we're eating dinner. And then after we get done, I would say, like at least a couple of times a week, it turns into dancing in the kitchen.
Hmm.
And anybody who wants to can just stand up and dance. Sometimes it's just me. Sometimes it's just our daughter going nuts, and sometimes it's everybody. I like, to me, those are like the little joy aspects where everybody's
Yeah.
laughing and having fun, and it doesn't matter if you're dancing well. We're always mostly just goofing off and stuff like that. But those moments turn into just like a nice bit of connection that you wouldn't have if you didn't like intentionally put on the music every single day or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And sometimes like I'll break out the Ninja Creamy and the kids can make their own ice cream. Or sometimes we just like have a game of tag in the house
Hmm.
for a minute or two. Sometimes I'm jumping on the trampoline with them or drawing, with chalk, kind of joining in on their activities. But, I think being intentional about that is really important, because you can get so lost, like I said, in the day to day, or just scrolling on your phone, kind of like escaping life. And it's really important to remind yourself to create those moments of joy. I think that's what, like we talked about with the memories and the experiences, I think that's what kids often remember the most.
Yeah, I love that. These are all so good. Do you have any other things you want to mention before we wrap this up?
No, I think like we talked about, like I don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information,
Totally.
and hopefully it's not, new information that you've never heard before, but just a reminder. And I hope something resonated with you that you can kind of think about and try to incorporate in your day to day. And like we said, just picking one even I think would make a big difference.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, Courtney, for sharing your expertise with everyone. And if you're out there and you're listening, you have any questions for the doctor, head on over to phases.fm/questions, or just head to phases.fm. There's a questions link in the bottom there. You can ask questions. We're going to be doing Q&A episodes on this podcast once we get enough questions coming in. That way we can answer your questions on the show. And as a first episode, I think this was pretty successful. What do you think?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too. So thank you all for joining us and listening to this first episode of Phases. Feel free to reach out and let us know what you liked or didn't like. We're always happy to take feedback and make this what you want to hear. So thank you, Courtney, for sharing your expertise, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks so much. See ya.